بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to continue in our reading in the book Al-Maqasid, and we're in the section of notes on 8.1. So we reached up to page 105, and we will continue with the main text. But I wanted to go over this note about why Muslims follow madhabs. Because one of the things I noticed is one of the barriers for us moving as a community and as a group is too many of us have their own version of Islam. I'm going to repeat that. One of the biggest barriers, especially in the Black community, whom I address often, one of the biggest barriers for us building and moving together as a collective, too many of us have our own version and understanding of what Islam is, which happens not to be the classical, authentic Islam as was conveyed by the Prophet ﷺ in the Muslim nation. That's a major obstacle in building, because there is no structured understanding of the deen. So everyone has his own sharia, their own fiqh, even sometimes their own aqidah and their own tasawwuf, which does not necessarily coincide in totality with the aqidah and the fiqh and the tasawwuf that has come to Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So one of the first things that I think, honestly, sincerely from my heart, I believe it, is that we need to relearn Islam in a way that is a systematic structure that was accepted globally and historically, so that we have the proper framework to build from. Our foundation needs to be sound as a collective. And one of the ways, and I think the most important way to do that, is by following our classical, traditional Islamic methodology. I think that's essential. So now with that, we have a set structure that has proven to work over the centuries to act upon, right? So no one's walking around making up their own fiqh rulings. No one's making up their own deductions of creed based on Quran and Sunnah without the requisite qualifications. No one is being a goofy Sufi. Everyone knows these are the rules. This is scholarship. This is people should follow. These are the sciences of the religion. These are the accepted books. These are the accepted methodologies of studying. We all know that, right? Or the vast majority of our communities understand that. And once we're like that, then we can move collectively. We all understand what we're trying to do. Without it, you're a bunch of scattered thoughts, right? Scattered thoughts. We all know the reliable position in the madhahib. We respect legitimate differences of opinion, legitimate scholarly difference of opinion. We know what they are. We know where they're taken from. And then we develop among ourselves a class of learned people, real scholarly people to put our questions before. Not, I read on the internet and I was searching YouTube, and that's how I learned my deen, which has no connection to you or your mission, and no connected chain to support anything you're listening to. No, that's not how it works. So I want to emphasize this point. I'm saying all that to say why I want to concentrate on this, as well as we're learning. These notes are extremely important in connection to why we're learning and what we're learning, right? So inshallah, let us continue. So we left off on that last paragraph. Can you read it again? Because I want to emphasize it before we continue, which was a modern Muslim who practices religion. You see where I'm at on page 104?
Yes.
Okay, let us recite Al-Fatiha to the soul of Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, a modern Muslim who practices his religion in the way it has been practiced since the earliest centuries of Islam meets with arguments of latter day reformers who say, often with complete sincerity, the words of Allah Ta'ala and His Messenger, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Allah Ta'ala bless him and give him peace, are divinely protected from error, while the schools of Mujtahid Imams such as Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, and Ahmed are not. Who needs the Imams of sacred law when we have the Quran and Sunnah and Hadith?
Oh, in another way, you would come across someone who says, I follow Quran and Sunnah, I don't need to follow a madhab, which means I don't follow the Imams. The Quran and Sunnah is divinely protected from error, while those Imams, they're human beings, they are men and we are men. And in reality, that sounds good, but in reality, it's not the Quran and Sunnah that's being discussed. It is your understanding of the Quran and Sunnah, right? And many times we don't realize how vast the knowledge of the Quran and Sunnah is. So the average person who makes such a statement doesn't just reads the text of the Quran and doesn't know anything about its related sciences. They read the text of Bukhari or Muslim, right? And even if they went to the 6 books, which most of them don't, but even if they did, they understand they reading the text, but they have no understanding of the sciences of hadith, what is related, the narrators of hadith, the weighing of hadith, no idea of none of this stuff. And based on that, they're making legal judgments. Whereas the 4 imams and the hundreds of scholars, top-ranked legal scholars who followed each of those imams over the centuries were masters of those and the related sciences, the texts and the related sciences. So when a person says that, without that background information, it sounds good. But when you examine it, it's almost will make you want to cry that someone could be so deluded, right? When you say, what did you just say? Really? We're going to leave the methodologies of those 4 Imams, which are not 4 Imams, hundreds and tens of thousands of people who worked on one school of thought. Scholars, I'm talking about. I'm talking about regular people who just follow. Hundreds at each level, and tens of thousands of scholars historically who've worked on just one school. One school, scholars. I'm not talking about regular people, right? At various levels of scholarship in its real meaning in every school. And we're going to leave all of that, which has become a scholarly consensus of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, of methodology they agree upon, to someone who knows nothing about none of that. And based on your opinion of the deen. And we've been living like that for decades. Decades. So we have to fix that. And we wonder why we haven't produced much scholarship. And we settle for inferior scholarship, which is not scholarship at all, but we call it that. An inferior level of scholarship, which around the world, in no field do people do that. There's always expertise. There's always professionalism in these fields. And in religious field of study, there's always learned people, a scholarly group. It always exists. We've nullified that, right? Because we have no access, and I believe that's intentional, to what even true scholarship really is. And that statement of I follow Quran and Sunnah and not the Imams is a loud and clear statement of my ignorance of sacred law, with exclamation marks following, a bunch of them, right? So when we all know we've heard this, we realize the danger that we're in as a community, as a group. It's dangerous. Because, as Sheikh al-Buti mentioned, and Sheikh Muhammad Zahid al-Kawthari, these are 2 great scholars that were in our time. They passed. May Allah have mercy on both of them. One who preceded the other, Sheikh Muhammad Zahid al-Kawthari, who was a great scholar in Egypt, he said, not following a madhab, a school of thought, is a bridge to not having a religion. I'm going to repeat that. He said, not following a school of thought, a madhab, is a bridge to not having a religion. And he wrote a book about that. Later, Al-Imam Muhammad Saeed Ramadan al-Buti, may Allah have mercy on him, he wrote a book called, and we read this book together already, Not Following a Madhab is the Most Dangerous Innovation Threatening the Sacred Islamic Law. It is the most dangerous innovation threatening the sacred law of Islam. So that shows you the gravity of the point. One said, not following the madhab is a bridge to no religion at all. And the other, he said, not following the madhab is the most dangerous innovation threatening the sacred law of Islam. Right? So if you look at those 2 statements, it highlights the importance of this subject. And then when you look at our situation on the ground, you see it. And here, imagine so you can connect. That you went to school and none of the teachers ever really studied education, but they're the teachers. None of them achieved higher learning degrees in education. None of them. None of them had formal studies in education, in the fields of education, and they run your school. What is going to look like? I'm going to ask you, would you send your children to that school? No one has background in education, not a one. The whole school, all the administrators, all the teachers, none of them have any certification, qualifications in education. Would you send your kids to those schools? Think about that. You wouldn't. If you think about it, you wouldn't. Even if they knew some stuff, you would be very cautious. You wouldn't do that. But we've developed the norm in our Islamic practice to have uneducated people leading and teaching and running, right? With no end in sight. That you'll have generations of people who don't know their religion. They just have form. It looked like religion, but it's not. It's do it as you feel. That's what not following the madhab is. Right? Honestly, that's what it is. What I just described, that's not following the madhab. You just put it in a religious tense. And that's not something that we should accept. We have to elevate our level of understanding of the religion. We don't all need to be scholars, but all of us, every single one of us, must know the importance of scholarship. Right? Even if we don't know it, we must know its importance. Right? We must know its importance. And this is why these subjects. Okay, Bismillah, continue.
It cannot be lost on anyone how urgent this question is, or that many of the disagreements we see and hear in our mosques these days between traditional Muslims and well meaning reformers stem from lack of knowledge.
Well meaning reformers is a politically correct way to say Al-Wahhabiyya and those who follow their methodology. For us, we can't play these games. We got to know what is hurting us. It is from the route of Al-Wahhabiyya and those who follow their methodology that this concept of not following the madhab has come. We follow Quran and Sunnah. It's the biggest disease threatening the Islamic body. That's where those ideas come from. They didn't exist before them. You didn't have the vast majority of Muslims not following madhabs. That only existed with the advent of the Wahhabi movement.
Stem from lack of knowledge of Islamic jurisprudence and its relation to the religion as a whole.
Notice this. So it stems from a lack of knowledge of al-fiqh and usul al-fiqh and its principles and how fiqh and usul al-fiqh relates to the entire deen. So if you take that out, you've taken a portion of the deen out. So now you have left with a big hole in your religion, in your religious practice, in your religious understanding, a big hole that What are you filling that with? Sometimes we have to really see what's happening. Mm.
Now, perhaps more than ever before, we have to get back to basics and ask ourselves how Allah Ta'ala intended us to understand and carry out His commands.
Now, I want to say something, and I'm going to say this because it's important that you understand. This is a white man, Sheikh Nohamin Keller, who doesn't live in our experience. Rather, he has his own area, his own educated followers, wealthy followers, suburban people who want to do their stuff, educated people, and he's not really personally affected in his circle by these ideas. In the literary circles, in the academic circles, he can discuss it from afar. Like, yes, these are going on. It's in the books. They're doing this on their level. But for us, on the ground level, it's a clear and present danger. Not the same, right? I know some of my friends who are in the same spot as the translator. They're affluent, they're white, Caucasian Americans. They're surrounded by educated people. They all got PhDs, master's degrees, bachelors, like almost an insult in those environments, but some of them have bachelors. They all make 75,000, 100,000, 150, 150, 200. Some of them are millionaires. All of their children, they build, their education is, that's that environment. I know firsthand, I've been around them, right? So they'll talk about these same things, and the way they talk about them is very passive because it really doesn't affect their environment. None of them are going to be Wahhabi. There's not even Wahhabis don't fit in their environment. Whereas us, we live with it every single day. When we walk out our door, when we go to our masjid, when we interact with people, this is what we're dealing with on the ground. So it's not the same. So you can talk passively about it. But for us, is a clear and present danger that will affect us, that has been affecting us for generations. Without the resources that you have at your disposal, we don't have those same resources. It's not the same fight. It's easy for you to be in the Pentagon talking about the war and you're not the soldier on the ground fighting. And the enemy is shooting directly at you. You just barking orders from over there. It's not the same fight. Though we're all in a fight, it ain't the same. Some of us are actually dying on the battlefield. It's a big difference. So a lot of times people come to me and they say, Imam Amin, why are you so Ashari? Just teach and don't say nothing. You're not fighting the fight I'm fighting. You in the comfort of your home talking junk. I'm not saying which the junk you talking ain't true, but it's just theory. You're not on the ground fighting the fight. You're not in your masjid fighting the fight. You're not in your neighborhoods fighting the fight. We are. It's a big difference. Big, huge difference. Your children are not at risk. Generations of my children are at risk. It's a big difference. A big difference. You know, that's like someone talking about racism who doesn't experience it, doesn't live it. Police brutality. Ain't no police never beat you up. What you talking about? I mean, nice that you realize it's wrong, but wait till they go upside your head and see how different it feel. It's much different. If you get my point. Go ahead.
This appendix provides a detailed answer. It first examines the knowledge of Islam that every Muslim possesses and then shows where fiqh enters into it. Looking at the qualifications mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah for those who do fiqh, the mujtahid scholars, it focuses on the extent of the mujtahid scholar's knowledge, how many hadiths he has to know, and so on, and then looks at the depth of his knowledge through actual examples of dalils or legal proofs that demonstrate how scholars join between different and even contradictory hadiths to produce a unified and consistent legal ruling.
I want you to read that part over again, because if we be honest, many of the people in our community who've been Muslims don't even know what a mujtahid is because of that. In Islamic, everyone knows, in Islamic studies, everyone knows that there is such thing as mujtahid, qualified scholarship. In our communities, I was listening yesterday. I'm gonna give you an example. And all of you who live in the inner city have heard this. Everybody walking around, people calling each other sheikh. Am I right or wrong in the inner cities? Assalamu alaikum, sheikh. What's up, sheikh? What's up with sheikh? How much do we hear that? Sheikh is a lofty title that represents scholarship, that represents learning. That's not to given to the drug dealer on the corner. That's not given to the guy who's a politician. That's not given to the taxi cab driver who didn't learn. That's a lofty title. It's not given to anybody. But it became just, so dude go to the masjid, so alaikum sheikh. Sheikh, it's not a sheikh. He's a beginner. How did he become sheikh? Do you walk around calling someone professor? No, you don't. University professor, assalamu alaikum. Do you do that? No. You have respect for those titles in the secular world, but when it comes to religion, you belittle the titles. Right? This is not a slogan we should have, because you're never going to distinguish. Nail, you're not allowed to talk. You didn't do your work. Be quiet. You didn't do your work. Be quiet. You're not allowed to talk. Right? No, seriously. That is a problem, which leads to other problems. What does it lead to? It leads to belittling a religious title that has a meaning behind it. I'm just messing with you now, yo. You know I'm just joking, right? And that's the point I'm making, that we have a title that means something religiously. It has meanings. When you say a sheikh, it has something behind it in meaning. It means a person acquired some things that are known in religious circles. When you belittle it, it loses its meaning in its entirety. Right? It loses its meaning in its entirety. And it undermines the whole process of Islamic learning. Right? So if that's the term sheikh, and then we don't even know what a mujtahid is, nor what does he do, nor his qualifications or anything, which is necessary for our legal practice. Right? Follow my point. We use the term sheikh out of line, belittling the knowledge, and the top sheikh is the mujtahid scholar. We know nothing about the title, nor its function, which is necessary for the validity of our Islamic practices. Think about that. It's necessary to have mujtahid scholars. It's necessary. Without them, we are deficient in our understanding and therefore our practice of the religion. without access to mujtahid scholars and their methodologies, which is a madhab. So what are we going to do? We're going to have the PhD at tops, the graduate from the Islamic University of so and so, who at his level is a beginner in Islamic studies. After graduating, a beginner. He's qualified now to read and begin to study the books of the mujtahid scholars and those who followed in their methodology. I want you to understand something. At the level of graduation, even at the level of PhD from modern Islamic institutions, such a person is now qualified to begin reading the books of our mujtahid scholars, not understanding them, not interpreting them, just to read them and be able to begin the process towards scholarship. Do you understand that? But be honest, in our environments, because of the lowering of the bar so much, we think that person's a scholar, which is delusion. Delusion, straight delusion. That person may graduate and still not know what scholarship is. Himself, have no idea. Because he went to school, he got this watered down curriculum, and he understand that. We don't depend how good he was in school. He may not even been that good, but he has a watered down understanding of the religion altogether anyway, in the school. And now that person comes back, and that's Shaykh al-Islam. I studied overseas, so I mean, nice that you took a trip and went on vacation, but what did you study? What did you study? Because you saying that to mean you are qualified for something. And our question should be, what are you qualified to do? And then you will find sometimes such a person contradicting the mujtahid scholars, contradicting consensus. That same person, from that corrupt education he learned that he called Islamic education, contradicting mujtahid scholars, their consensus on issues. What are you talking about? And what I'm saying is to show you the importance. All I'm doing is taking this and highlighting in our context the points that he's mentioning. Because if you read it without understanding exactly what he's saying, it may go right over your head, right? Because he's talking about something. Of course. Of course. See, I'll give you an example. I like it how we put it. He said, is it appropriate to say that secular titles and religious spiritual titles are way different? All of that is different. You have secular title, you have a religious science title, and then you have spirituality, which is another thing. And all of those have different meanings in Islam. They're not the same, nor do they require the same things. So a spiritual guide may not be a religious jurist, right? But the spiritual guide must have some knowledge and some capacity in religious jurisprudence. But he doesn't have to be a scholar. And the scholar may not even be a religious spiritual person at all. May not even be in the field except as a basic traveler on the path. So there's different things. And the secular titles would be necessary for filling a fard kifaya, and the scholar who's a spiritual person or religious person may have none of that. but that person with the secular title is necessary for that communal obligation, right? So for instance, a secular title, he may be an engineer. We need engineers. He may be a doctor. He may be a lawyer. He may be a farmer. These are all different fields. They're needed to fulfill the fard kifaya, the communal obligation. The scholar who's a faqih or a muhaddith or a mufassir, right, or an usuli, he may know nothing about farming, nothing about engineering, nothing about mathematics. That's not his field. So he's going to have what? Recourse to them when we got to talk about that. Just as when we need religious rulings, they're going to have resource to him. And maybe none of them are at the spiritual levels of understanding spiritual matters. So therefore, we're going to refer to that person who's an expert in that. All of these things have defined principles by which you can identify someone who is qualified and someone who is not. With that being said, I'm going to have to stop here because I don't want to go over time with our reader. I won't stop, but I don't want to. I came in late. So get what I'm saying. Please, none of this is to put anyone down. It's to put everything in context. Now, because a person is not a scholar, doesn't mean that we can't benefit from them. So for instance, I'm not even a good layman, but I do have some things that I can help you with, which you're learning, right? So that's my area, to help you with the stuff you don't know so you can develop. But for me to claim above that is a crime, right? There are some things I learned. There are some books I learned in the proper way from teachers, and I can convey that to you, right? There are some access that I have that I know a lot of people don't have, so I can share that access with you. But in no way does that rise to the level of claiming scholarship, especially when you know what scholarship is. So all we're doing is what? Identifying it. And hopefully when we identify it, we build ourselves up to achieve it, even if it ain't us, right? So for instance, let me give you the example. Let me give you an example. So if we're studying hadith, and this is not a shot, but I'm using it because it's using, right? If we're saying someone they're in the field of hadith, and I'll give you a real incident. One time, we were in the masjid, and some people came to the masjid, and the guy walked up and said, "Where's the Imam? Where's Imam Amin?" And brothers, I don't know if any brothers are here, we were in the masjid. And so they came in a little group, and they had this guy, he had on a turban and everything. He looked like, Sheikh al-Islam. He did look the part. So they came up, these young guys was all, fascinated. And they said, "Imam, we got the Sheikh of Hadith with us. And he's going to come and you need to let him teach." MashaAllah. The Sheikh of Hadith. MashaAllah. So he came in and they were walking, they were strutting too. Like, MashaAllah. So we start to talk. And I said to him, "You are a Sheikh of Hadith." He said, yes, I studied all of the books of hadith. I said, really? I said, mashallah. I said, you did? He said, yes, I graduate. I am here at this term. And he was really telling these kids that, young people. I said, good. I said, mashallah, we love hadith here. This is our thing. Our teachers are scholars of hadith. We love hadith. I said, Sayyidi, could you please tell me the first hadith in Bukhari with its chain of narrations? He looked at me. I said, the first hadith in Al-Bukhari with its chain of narration. Boom! He was stuck. I said, how are you Shaykh of hadith? And the most authentic book of hadith after the Quran is Sahih al-Bukhari, and you can't tell me the first hadith with its chain of narration. I don't think we need to talk anymore, do we, Shaykh al-Hadith? He said, oh, we didn't learn like that. I said, I mean, what you're saying is you didn't learn. You know some stuff. So take that Shaykh al-Hadith title down and let's see what we can study together. But he was actually coming like to exalt and take over the Masjid in the Shaykh al-Hadith, who don't know the first hadith in the Bukhari. Which anyone who studies hadith should know that, if that's your field. Because people in the field know that hadith is not just text, it's text with chain of narration. Sanad wal matan, that's a person of hadith. And if you're Shaykh al-Hadith, actually, where was the next questions were going, could you please tell me about each of the rijal in those hadith, who they were? Because you Shaykh al-Hadith. Tell me about those narrators. Not just you mentioned their names, now tell me about them. From whom they learned and who learned from them. Let's go, Shaykh al-Hadith. What was my point? Not to put him down, to stop exalting yourself above your rank. Because what you're doing is pretending, and the real scholars of hadith, we won't even look at them, we'd be looking at you. And you're not their representative at all, which is fine. You should strive to do it. But you came with an idea that is not real. I know you didn't expect a bunch of black folks to have that kind of information and to be able to ask those questions. Well, we were black folks who actually sat with teachers who were real scholars of hadith, who had continuous change from ourselves back to Imam al-Bukhari, so we know the difference. We actually read the Bukhari, covered it with explanation. We know the difference. And we realize we're not in what a real scholar looks like. You can't fool us. Not these days. Wrong place. Sorry. Now, that doesn't mean we can't benefit from you. We're just not going to put you where you deluded yourself to be. We're going to put you as a brother seeking knowledge who studied some stuff, and we all going to share. Alhamdulillah. That's great. But that Shaykh al-Hadith stuff, stop it. We're not going to do that. Because we're going to learn enough to recognize, because we would like to see that. But we have to know enough to recognize when you're running game on us. And it's fine that you don't have it. That's not a problem. Don't claim it. That's a problem. I don't have it. All right, fine. We work on it to get it together. We want to see you have it. Maybe you'll sit here and you will become Shaykh al-Hadith eventually, because we're going to put a rigorous thing on you that's going to help you do that. So come sit with us. Come on. We're going to show you what scholars of hadith really do. And then, hopefully, because we're not there, we already know that, but through sitting with us, you may get there. You may have the capacity that we don't. That's possible. And we hope that's the case because we need it, right? But we ain't going for the banana in the tailpipe. We ain't doing that, right? We're not doing that. So we're going to keep you in your spot and we're going to grow together. You're not going to come fake us and you're on top of us and we stay deluded. We ain't doing that. Right? And it's not to put us down. It's not. It's to put us in the places we need to be to grow. Delusion is very bad. To believe you're somewhere you're not hurts. As we talked about yesterday, ask Ye. Ask Ye. He was deluded. He thought he was a billionaire. Go look at his videos. He's talking about how much money he got. He's broke. He was deluded. That's painful to be deluded. He actually thought, hey, man, I'm in charge. I'm the man. I'm Michael Corleone. No, you're not. You broke. Them people that's paying you is Michael Corleone. Right? Oh, he never came back. He sat and we started talking about hadith, but he never came back after that. He realized it wasn't going to be a place he could play games. So, right. No one's going to, oh, great hadith master, how shall we kiss your hand? No one's going to do that here. We black, bro. We ain't doing that. No, stop. Joking. All right, but I think we got this point. So if last read, can we read that paragraph over one more time? The last paragraph before we go to the next one. We'll stop after that.
Looking at the qualifications,
This appendix.
This appendix provides a detailed answer. It first examines the knowledge of Islam that every Muslim possesses.
So
and
this
then,
is our Fard Ain and what we need to know. So all of us have to have a certain amount of knowledge. When you get that certain amount of knowledge, believe me, it'll help you identify the other things. When you have your Fard Ain well, according to a school, everyone needs to know that in creed and practice. When we got that as a standard, then we already can identify when someone is pulling the wool over our eyes, right? Because we know the basics of the religion that everyone must know. The problem is most people don't even know the basics. The obligatory knowledge of the religion, people don't know because they were told not to follow madhabs. That's why they don't know, not because they're not intelligent. They were told just follow Quran and Sunnah. It's impossible to know your obligatory knowledge if you're not a mujtahid to follow Quran and Sunnah and get that. It's impossible. It'll never happen. If you're not a mujtahid, you could never just read the Quran and Sunnah and learn what is obligatory upon you. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to miss some things because that involves extracting rules, and you need the tools to do that. It's like building a house without nails, without screws, without a hammer, without wood. It's impossible. Go ahead.
and then shows where fiqh enters into it.
So now we're talking about what we need to know as a Muslim. And now, how does fiqh fit in that? Here's your creed, here's your fiqh, here's your spirituality. Fiqh fits in there. And what's its role?
Looking at the qualifications mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah for those who do fiqh.
So once you know that fiqh is a part of it, then we got to know what's the qualification for the one who's going to extract those rulings.
The mujtahid scholars.
So now keep that in mind, the mujtahid scholars. We don't have mujtahid scholars today at the level of absolute mujtahid scholars. We don't have them. If one exists, we don't know them. Across the world, listen, around the world, if there is a mujtahid, absolute mujtahid scholar, we don't know him. In the Muslim world, I'm talking about we, us black people, Imam, Amin. In the Muslim world, if there is an absolute mujtahid scholar, we don't know him. I don't know, and I know a lot of scholars. I've never met one who claims to be an absolute mujtahid, which means I don't need to follow a madhab. I don't know a scholar on the planet, and I met a lot of scholars who ever made that claim, except Wahhabiyya. And they don't make that claim. They just say, I follow Quran and Sunnah, which is that, but they don't say, I'm an absolute mujtahid. No one says that. So that means no one that we know is going to make such a claim, which means that if you're not a mujtahid, you're a muqallid. So whoever says that, then they have to follow a madhab. And that's our greatest scholars around the world. So what about the one who's not even a scholar? That's the greatest scholars around the world. All over the world, anywhere you go in the world, this discussion is the same. I don't care if we're in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Indonesia, Malaysia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Russia, I don't care where we at. In the world, everyone is under these guidelines. So if you're not a mujtahid, that means you're following a school. You're muqallid. Period. There's no other option. Mujtahid, muqallid. Okay. So therefore, these rules apply to everybody, not just the poor black people in North America, and we're the only one being afflicted with madhabs. La. Everywhere in the world, that's what they have to do. Go ahead.
It focuses on the extent of the mujtahid scholar's knowledge, how many hadiths he has to know, and so on, and then looks at the depth.
As an example, the mujtahid, when they talk about his knowledge of hadith, they said, and this is what we learned from our teachers, his knowledge of hadith is around 300,000 hadith with their chains of narration. Let me put that up. That's his hadith knowledge. Minimum. The absolute mujtahid, his knowledge of hadith is up there. Right? Because of his vastness of the sacred law. I don't know nobody on the planet who got that kind of knowledge today. And my teachers are in the field of hadith. I don't know nobody like that. Nobody. And that's from memory, not from reading a book. From memory. Meaning he doesn't just know one narration of a hadith, he knows multiple routes of that hadith. So you have one hadith, but he knows routes of that hadith. Right? Absolute knowledge of hadith, he has to have a vast narration. So think about his discussion of hadith. When that mujtahid Imam talks about hadith, think about what he's talking about. And now I want you to keep in mind, that's him. And all of his students are of a similar rank. So he's talking as the Imam, and as they're discussing, around him are people like that. Around him are people like that. And we're talking about you can't find one person like that that we know of in the entire world. You can't find one. And that's why I'm in love with our tradition. When I think about it, I say to myself, amazing. Because I actually been around our scholarship today, and it's no comparison whatsoever. And I'm talking about illustrious scholars. They're not like that. So I think to my mind, these are our foremost people, and they're not like that. How deep were these mujtahid scholars? Right? And I've seen top scholars in Yemen, in Saudi Arabia, in Syria, in Egypt, the Sham areas. I've seen top ranked scholars of the time. They're not like that. So just imagine what these mujtahids are like. I just want you to think about it. Like, this ain't somebody I'm talking from, like, not seeing it, firsthand, witnessing it. They're not like that at all. They don't even make such a claim. And these are our top-ranking scholars. What does those mujtahid scholars have to be like? What was their environment when you think about it? Right? Think about that. We met some of the top scholars in the countries around the world, the top leading like scholars, and they were not like that. Think about our tradition. It's rich. These people are walking computers, and we're challenging them with nothing, saying we don't follow that. I follow Quran and Sunnah. Are you serious? These are walking computers. They were walking Mac Pros in Islamic context. And you challenging with nothing. Like, think about it. I'm just putting it in your mind. We on Quran and Sunnah. Are you kidding? You should be arrested. Like, and in real Islamic societies, you would be arrested. Think about that. When those mujtahid scholars existed, the person like that would be put in jail. You would be arrested. That would be a crime. And it's still a crime, even though we don't have Muslim rulers in a Muslim government, it's still a crime. It's a crime. You can't do that. But in our time, being a criminal has become common. And what I'm saying, go ahead, this is a long thing. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And then looks at the depth of his knowledge through actual examples of dalils or legal proofs that demonstrate how scholars join between different and even contradictory hadiths to produce a unified and consistent legal ruling.
So now they're going to talk about the dalils and how those scholars deal with those proofs from the Quran and the Sunnah and the methodology and how they reconcile contradictions that seem to be apparent contradictions outwardly. How do they join hadith? How do they solve these issues when there seems to be contradictions? How do they know which type of hadith is accepted and which one is not? How the verses are accepted as a ruling and not? How do they know all that stuff? That's a field. That's a field. We ain't even talked about that at all. Now,
it closes with a discussion of the mujtahid's relation to the sciences of hadith authentication, which have been seriously put forward in recent years as a substitute for fiqh, and the conditions by which a scholar knows that a given hadith is sahih or rigorously authenticated so that he can accept and follow it.
So today, with that modern Wahhabi movement, you have this idea we the people of hadith, as you challenging the mujtahidun scholars. So you don't even know, for instance, those mujtahid imams, they had their own criteria of weighing hadith. They didn't refer to Sahih Bukhari or Sahih Muslim or At-Taqrib by Ibn Hajar Asqalani to evaluate narrators. Does anyone know what At-Taqrib by Ibn Hajar Asqalani is? Would anyone know what that is? Come on, Farouk, show me your sheikhhood. You walk around being called sheikh. What's At-Taqrib by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani? Come on, Sheikh Nail. Give me an answer. Google, 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 Google. I love my people. Right? So they had their own stuff, those mujtahid scholars. Right? No. There you go. Good, Sufyan. You the Sheikh al-Islam around here. Right? And Abdul Wali. So that small summarized book which deals with narrators of hadith. That's all the book is about. The narrators of the hadiths in the 6 books, right? Right? Just the 6 books. But you know, most of the people who say we're people of hadith, that's what they study. And they try to make all judgments on hadith based on that, which is impossible. But they do it, right? Not even really being in the field. But the Imams, they didn't rely on these type of things. They had that from their own knowledge, right? And then they would weigh hadith based on their own knowledge of narrators, their own narrators of hadith narrations, from their own stuff. Big difference. Big difference. Night and day. So I'm saying all that, and we'll stop here. Thank you, reader, for extending yourself extra time. May Allah reward her. Please make dua for her and her family. She's been very patient with us. But these matters are extremely important. Extremely important. And trust me, we speak about them so we don't keep falling into the same trap. Some point, we're going to have to learn to follow. Right? At some point. Right? We're going to have to learn to follow. And then, once we learn to follow, establish a methodology of what we follow, which is already written, and then keep the bar and let it grow. I'm talking about stuff that we're not going to live to see. We're not going to live to see, but we have to put it in process. It's a very hard job because the most difficult part of this job is to get us to admit we don't know and then get us to start learning. That's the hardest part. To get us to say, listen, I need to learn. I had it confused. Not everything, but some important, essential matters I got mixed up. I have to go back and learn. And then to set up the teachers to help us learn what we missed, who are bold enough to challenge a system that has become corrupt. You have to be bold because that's not the norm. Because you're going to learn something here, and when you go back to your local place and your environment, it's going to be filled with people who are Wahhabi, default Wahhabi, or influenced with those ideas. And there's your challenge. And we've been in that mode for decades. So it's challenging to redo the whole educational system that we've been used to for so long. Even though it's a wrong educational system. It is what we had. We got to deal with what we have. But we're not there right now. We can't keep doing the same thing. We have to fix it. And may Allah accept where we were at and what we had. But we're not there now. We can't do the same stuff. Access was denied, so we had to do what we do. But access is not denied now. We have access. We have to change directions. We have to change courses. It's a must. Because we're behind and we're lagging. So may Allah make it easy, inshallah. Right? May Allah make it easy. And I hope that this push, it's people who's listening who know exactly what I'm talking about. They just got to get up the aspirations to do it and stop cowing down to stuff you know's wrong. That's a big problem. We got people who know exactly what I'm saying. They know exactly. But when they're in face of the other stuff, they cow down. they kick into Rodney King mode. Quick. Can't we all just get along? We can get along once we learn properly. Because if we don't learn properly, we're not really getting along. We're killing ourselves. We're destroying the religion inside. We're going to a bridge to no religion at all. And you have the tools and the knowledge to prevent that. But you're succumbing to the pressure. We can't do that. We can't do that. And listen, I'm telling you, I know it like I know my name. And that's why I speak the way I speak, because I know what I'm talking about. And I don't mind I'm not making a claim. I'm just in the same boat as you. And I recognize we're in this boat and we got to get out. We're drowning. And I don't have all the tools to get us out, but I know for sure these are things we need to do, and we can't keep doing that. I know that with 100% certainty. And I can prove it. I can show it. And it ain't no one that we're going to have to be intimidated by, even if they know more than us. Because if they're not following their system, they're corrupting stuff. If they're not following this system, they're making claims, and their claims are shallow. If they're following the system, we're going to follow them. We're going to listen. We're going to learn because they're doing the same thing we're doing. They may not like the way I'm kind of strict, straight, and direct. So they don't like that. Because a lot of, unfortunately, our people, these ain't lions. They're more like nice house cats. And they learned, but it's a house cat. It's tamed, it's domesticated. I'm a field Negro. I'm out in the wild. So I have a different nature, right? I'm being hunted, and sometimes I have to hunt. Because if we just stay passive, we're going to get swallowed. And I know that. I'm on a battlefield. I have my weapons, and I see the bullets coming and the bombs dropping. I'm not in the Pentagon. I'm on the field. I know the difference, right? So with that understanding, it's not going to sound the same, right? It's not going to sound the same. But it is the same thing. We're all in it. But just, I'm a soldier on the field. I know what's going on. I'm in the field. I understand there's people who want to learn, and all they got as access is nonsense, false claims of scholarship. That's what they have. And they actually buy that stuff and believe it. And the people who selling them that won't even tell them, man, I'm fake as all outdoors. I'm not no scholar. I'm not learned. I graduated and I still don't know nothing. No, I'm a graduate from the University of Medina. Come on, stop. Stop. Please, stop. But they're in our neighborhoods like they scholars. You are not even a student of knowledge, a little student of knowledge, a beginner on Similac. You acting like you drinking whole milk. Stop. So understand my push, because if we ever get it right, mashallah, we are strong people. Just imagine we got it right. And in every masjid, every home, people are studying the levels of books of fiqh, the levels of the books of Aqidah, sciences of tasawwuf, the secondary sciences, traditionally, properly, and we rolling, and that's our stuff. It looked totally different. Nobody's walking around making fatwas without knowledge. No one's doing none of that. We actually have everything we need, and it's regular. It's the norm. We go anywhere in our cities, and there's a learned teacher teaching a book of fiqh properly with a chain of narration, a book of hadith, a book of aqidah, a book of Arabic language. And that's just the norm in our communities. Imagine that. That's the norm. That's the norm. Overseas, in those traditional Islamic countries, that is, even though it's getting worse there too, but that was the norm. You just go sit. There's a scholar teaching this in fiqh, this in hadith, this book. His chain of narration is this. He's teaching qira'at of the Quran. He's teaching usul al-fiqh. He's teaching seerah and all this stuff with chains of narration, proper books. It's the norm. Wouldn't that be a great thing? That's what I'm calling for. Wouldn't that be a great thing? Think about that. And think about the reward, even if we're not capable of doing it. We help establish that. Think about the reward. Think about the reward that we would get for establishing something like that. We didn't have the ability to do it. We don't have enough knowledge, but we recognize its need, and it is a need, and we did everything we could do to establish it. And it was established, and it went on for the next 1,000 years. Wow. You in your grave getting the reward for all that work. Think about that. Just imagine if we could do that, right? And trust me, we can. We can. But we have to get serious about it. First, we have to know it's a need, and then we got to get serious about working towards it. It's a need. It's definitely a need. But we got to work. And listen, it ain't easy. No one said it was. Trust me, it's not. It's not easy. And I honestly believe, it's my personal belief and experience, there's a concentrated effort making sure we don't do it. That is funded, that is supported, that is spread, that is advertised to make sure we never do it. That's my personal belief and experience from behind the scenes. I've seen it. Ain't nobody trying to help Black people for real. Not like that. They're not. It's all tokenism. And we have to do something about that. We have to do something about that. There are those who understand and they will assist, but that assistance needs to be joined with our serious, unwavering work. So we get assistance from people who understand, and it will come. But the real work is our work. We have to do that. All around the country, every place where we're at, we have to be on the ground working. That's the work. And I tell my family all the time, we're going to die doing this. We don't have a choice. We don't retire. We retire when we die. That's it. There's no retirement from this. The work will go on generationally. We can't stop. We have to die doing it. There's never going to be a time where we are not teaching. We have to. Our last breath is going to be conveying the knowledge, inshallah ta'ala. When we're incapacitated and sick and can't do no more, which is equivalent to us dying in that term. But that's what all of us have to do at our levels. Everyone has a job. Some of us are just going to support financially until we die. Some of us, because we can't do much more, some of us are going to just make dua that Allah makes this real until we die. Some of us are going to actually study and learn until we die. And some of us are going to be teaching until we die. Everybody at their level until we die. Wa'bud rabbaka hatta ya'tiyaka al-yaqeen. Worship your Lord in all those forms of worship until death comes to you. May Allah let us die in gentleness and well-being. Fi lutfin wa afiyah. Insha'Allah ta'ala. Barakallahu bikum. Today is Wednesday. We are off today. May Allah make it easy for us. May Allah make it so. May Allah make it so. May Allah make it so. Ya Rab. Barakallahu bikum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.